Hey, everybody. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. And thank you for joining me. Today, I get to share space with Cara Wilson-Granat. She is a woman who connected with Otto Frank at the age of 12. Otto is the father of Anne Frank, the young teen who didn't quite make it from the Holocaust. It's her diary that inspired him and led him to be an amazing support for Cara and other children who wrote to him. He kept their letters, and Cara shares her story of meeting him, how he changed her life, and the impact he has had not only on her, but the world. Cara Wilson-Granat, Otto Frank's gift, lessons from Anne. Hi, everybody. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I have a woman that who knows where this conversation is really going to go. We're going to kick it off one way, but it'll go someplace else. My name is Cara Wilson-Granat, and she has a little amazing story that I'm sure she's told 1,000 times, but we're going to talk a little bit more than that. So, Cara, thank you for joining me so much.
Thank you, Gail, for having me here.
Yeah, so one of the things that Cara does, and she is an author, she is a speaker, but as a child, she was brave enough to write a letter to a man who actually wrote back to her, and they became connected, and she got to know this man who had an influence on her life, especially when she went through the barrels of crap. And I am not going to say who it is, Cara. I want you to tell your story the way that you feel comfortable in telling your story, and we will let this conversation go.
Okay, Gail. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes, I've told this story many, many times
Right.
in many different ways to many different audiences of all ages. Um, and it's a joy. You know, we have our purposes in our life, and I feel like I'm a channel for this wonderful human being. The way it started, you're right. This man was the father of Anne Frank, Otto Frank. And how this started was in the early 50s. As soon as I say that, you know, it's like I become Dorian Gray. I'm like, oh my God, she's really old. Yeah, that's true. But that in our country, the Diary of Anne Frank, this book was becoming. It had just really been published in Europe, in Holland, and in the late 40s, and came to our country, and then it just took off after you know, was finally discovered, and it became a Broadway show, and people were going crazy over who is this, you know, young girl, Anne Frank, who with 8 others had gone into hiding from the Nazis in Holland. They were a German family, and uh, that throughout that time, 2 years, 1 month, she wrote in this diary and other notebooks, wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. That's the thing that kept her sane, living with 8 other people. She was just a teenager. She started writing it when she was 13, and she was writing nonstop, and she described everything, all her feelings, and it was just brilliantly written, funny and moving, and I recommend it to everybody, because of all ages, because they'll say, oh yeah, I read it in school, and I'll say, read it again. You won't believe it, because there's such a message in it. And then somebody betrayed them, and they were captured. And she and her sister and all of them except Otto Frank were murdered. So it's a tragic ending, but her vital spirit lives on. So at the point that I became involved in this story, I was 12 years old in Southern California, and talent scouts were going all over trying to find a young girl who looked like Anne to star in the movie The Diary of Anne Frank at 20th Century Fox. And I was asked if I would, you know, I was discovered, they said, you know, you look a lot like Anne at that age. Would you be interested in auditioning? Well, of course. I mean, I wanted to be an actor, a dancer. I was thrilled. And I just, you know, of course I would. But I hadn't read. I didn't know who she was. And then that's why I love speaking to, you know, middle schools, because that's the age I was and Anne was. And read this story and I was devastated. I had never known anything like it. And I couldn't believe she really did. She was so vital and so vibrant, and she seemed to speak for me the way she did for young people all over. Uh, I was just enthralled and devastated and completely enraptured with this story, but also her love for her father, Otto, who he was in hiding with them. He had been a businessman, you know, and he'd never had time to be with his children like this, but because they were all in hiding, he was able to be their teacher. She and her sister Margaret and another family there, the Von Dams, Peter, young boy.
Mhm.
So Otto was like their teacher every day. They had to whisper because there was a factory below them. And this was a spice and jam factory, and they had four helpers, five helpers, four helpers that worked along with them, that were helping them. They were very brave. These were non-Jews that signed on and said, we'll do everything for you. And they did, to help them find food, everything they needed. But their lives were terribly endangered. And they all had to be very careful of the factory workers below to not hear any creaking of the floors or flushing of toilets in the daytime when these people were there. And that's when Anne would write nonstop. So it's quite a powerful story. And I encourage everybody to read it. Her voice is so loud. It's so amazing. And he was this, you know, the glue that kept them all together, did everything he could. So by the time I was auditioning, uh, you know, they had all passed, but Otto was, I didn't know, you know, and when I auditioned, of course, I didn't get the part. Millie Perkins did. And I say, okay. But I said, is Otto Frank still alive? And they said, yes, he's still alive. He's in Basel, Switzerland. Could I write to him? And they said, yes, you could write to him. And they gave me his address. So that was the beginning of this incredible relationship. And he had met his second wife, Fritzi, because he knew his first wife, Edith, had died in the camps. And he had met Fritzi and her daughter, Eva, coming back on the trains. And they became very dear friends for 7 years. And then after 7 years, they got married. So along beside him in this new life of his was Eva, who was Fritzi, who I just adored. And the daughter, Eva, was wonderful. Eva Schloss is still alive. She's 100, amazing woman, almost 100 in England. Super bright lady. And but Fritzi was, she was like a grandmother to me. And she was right beside Otto throughout this journey that he was on. And he basically answered me like this loving father, grandfather, no matter what I said, no matter how I said it, no matter how many explanation points I put afterwards, you know, what should I do? And blah, blah, blah. And I met this boy and blah. He answered me, never judging me, very kindly. I see that you say this, and here I, you know, and it was a steady beat in my life. And it was I say to young people, do you know what a letter is? Do you know what I mean when I say a letter? Because letter writing is a whole different world. You wait, you know, and it's not immediate, you know, so you don't know if you're going to get a quick response or not. But it was just a beautiful relationship. And I would be calling him and crying right now the way the world is right now. I miss him so much because what he said to me in the mid 60s when we had the Kennedy King assassinations and Vietnam War and race riots in the streets. I had never seen a world like that. And I wrote to him and I said, I don't know why you are so filled with hope. I will never bring a child into a world this cruel. And he wrote back and he said, Cara, even if you believe the end of the world would be imminent, you still plant a tree today. You must not give up hope. This man who lost his entire life, his beloved daughters, is telling me not to give up hope. And I received a card from him on my birthday that said 2 trees had been planted in Israel in my name from Otto Frank. And he knew that would get to me because nature is even though I'm Jewish, nature's my religion. That's where I find God, where I find sustenance.
Mm.
And he knew planting a tree would resonate with me so strongly, as it does to this very day. He's saying, and I can hear him saying now, you mustn't give up hope. That's all we have, and so we we eventually did meet, and we can talk about that, but this was the letters that went on and on and on. That was the rhythm, the steady beat, the heartbeat in my life was Otto Frank.
So he gave you a foundation that you were very fortunate
Very.
to have. And, life, no matter how strong your foundation, is never smooth
Right.
and throws us a curveball. The
Right.
good thing about a strong foundation is that your resilience is easier, but you still need to be resilient.
Exactly.
And so at the age of 50, I can so relate to this, you found yourself divorced.
Yes, I mean, so exactly. This is usually the part I don't talk with audiences. I only tell that story of meeting Otto Frank and what he meant to me, and Fritzi, and how they were, influenced my life, and opening up the big cabinet door and then from ceiling to floor, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of boxes filled with thousands of letters from young people all over the world. And he made me feel so special. I knew he was writing to other people. I didn't realize how many, and the impact of it, and how unique, how he was able to save each of us. And their stories, two of them are like my brothers. One became a priest because of Otto Frank. One was Jehovah's Witness and was almost adopted by Otto. Father John Neiman and Ryan Cooper were like, they still are my brothers. I love them so much, and we each have a different perspective. We gave a talk last year. I donated all my letters to the Anne Frank Center in Columbia, South Carolina, and I encourage everybody to go there. It's the most beautiful place, part of university, headed by Dr. Doyle Stevick. It's an amazing, amazing, amazing place. They've replicated the Anne Frank house and they have the students there take you through tours just the way Otto would want it. It's just a beautiful place. And I feel yeah.
So I do understand that your communication with him
Right.
was part of the tools used to uncover who actually ratted them out.
Right.
That's
true.
Did that happen before or after your divorce? I mean, at what point did that?
It happened recently.
Okay, so it was after.
It
Okay.
happened recently. And again, we're still going over a lot. Vince Pankow is the retired investigator, an extraordinary man. I just love him, and he loves Otto. He loves the story, and he and his team were tenacious about the cold case. And he was asked by somebody, would you help us do this? And for years they worked on it. I mean, every single lead. When I would say to him, did you think about that? He reached out to me and said, can we see your early letters from Otto Frank? And I said, of course. So I scanned them. And then he said, okay, I'm going to ask you, if I promise to really protect him, could you send them to me, and we will protect them and we'll send them back to you. We have to look at them. So they were registered. And I mean, he practically stayed up all night to wait for the plane to land in Holland. He's an amazing person. And when they finally received those early letters, the very first letters, they took them to a specialist in Germany, and they analyzed them. And he couldn't tell me, Vince could not tell me what they were looking at or why they were so excited by the results. He just said he couldn't thank me enough. He said, it's exactly what we were hoping for. So now I could say it was the font on the typewriter that Otto had used. So it's I encourage people to read extraordinary book by Rosemary Sullivan, The Betrayal of Anne Frank, and it he has a very good story, a very good case. There are still others. Now, Joop, I'm going to say his name wrong. Joop, Joop is the son of Bep, or Ellie in the diary, and he wrote this extraordinary book with a partner, and Joran, who is a journalist, talking about his mother, and their story, his story, and that is phenomenal, brilliantly written, and they have a case talking about the betrayal. So this is going to be continually discussed. And Vince is open to all these things. He's a very open-minded man, and his feeling is, yes, I'll look at everything if there is something tangible to, there's a lot of hearsay or talking. Unless you have a real tangible something, it's hard to find the facts. But I encourage everybody to look at it and read Joop's book, because it's so well written, and as is Rosemary's, and each one has their point of view, their perspective. But I know that Vince was very excited, and so when I asked Otto, do you know who betrayed you, he just looked at me and said, it doesn't matter. Not no, it doesn't matter. At that point, I knew what he was saying. He knew, but he was at peace. He had a good life. He had children all over the world, helped him continue being a parent. He had grandchildren through Eva. He had this wonderful, relationship, marriage with Fritzi. There was peace. There was sadness in his eyes. I saw it, but he was telling me, go forward. And he was one that had tremendous integrity. So if this was all true, that what Vince and everybody found, that the man who betrayed them was Jewish, and he was a father, and he was trying to protect his children, that's all Otto would have to know. And he would do anything to protect him. The other, Joop has a story about Bep's story, and her sister Nellie, an incredible story. I don't know. All I know is that what he said to me has resonated with me so strongly, because everything in my whole life matters. This matters, that matters, this matters. And I can hear him say, does it really matter? Is it going to do any good? What will be the upshot of the mattering of what you're doing now?
I love that. One of the things that I do when I work with clients is help them focus on living literally, I call it the space between the moments.
Good.
Because that's the now.
That is.
Right?
That is.
Right? And when you do that, there is no past, there is no future, and there is no mattering. There is no, it's just a story.
It's a story. And what if you're going to write, and when people write memoirs, go ahead and do it, but don't do it to hurt somebody, and I'm going to call you out. Why? And that's, Otto he was such a gentleman. He was Atticus. To me, he was Atticus. Everything about him, in To Kill a Mockingbird. He was a man that had thought in a big way. Now, when he was first liberated from the camps, it sure did matter. He did everything he could to find out who did this, who betrayed them, who killed his family. He tried to find out desperately. And it was only when Miep, his assistant, and Bep saved her diary and gave it to Otto that he realized he could go on. He had something, because Anne wanted to go on after her death.
Right.
So he had a purpose, like Viktor Frankl says. If you have a purpose, a meaning in life, you can go on. But that was a huge, besides the planting a tree today, what Otto said to me, that it doesn't matter So yes, years after he passed, Fritzy and I were still in contact, and the rest of the family. Buddy Elias, the nephew, who I just adored. We were still very dear friends and encouraging each other. And my life hit, you know, so a long marriage, 25 years, bankruptcy, lost my beautiful home in the hills. Thank God my sons were off to college and off, so I didn't have to worry about little ones. I had, I couldn't believe that my cozy little world, my cocoon, was burst. And on my way, a friend of mine said, "Well, come write for us. You'll be fine." She said later, she said, "I didn't know what I was going to do, but you sounded so bad." I had no idea what I was going to do at age 50, almost 50, starting all over. I'd never really been on my own. I really had gone from college to marriage and raised children. Knew nothing about the world. And here I'm driving, God knows where. And this voice said really strongly, "You're fine. Your animals are fine. Your kids are fine. But you're not learning your lessons." This voice, very strong voice, said to me. "So we're pulling the rug out from under you. And you're
That's
going to
what
have to,
happens.
it absolutely, you're going to have to learn, and you're going to have to start over." And, it's sort of like get over it. I have some tough angels, let me tell you. You know,
Oh, I know.
well, you sure do know. I mean, but we can't, unless I guess we can take it, but I couldn't believe it. And I didn't want to go on living. I thought I've reached the worst part of my life. And yet what kept me going when I thought, why am I here? I couldn't answer, why am I here? But I had 6 animals to feed and take care of. That's why they saved my life. Who's going to take care of them?
Right?
My babies. So I
Right?
had to, I had to feed my animals. I had to take care of them. I had to find jobs. I didn't know what I was going to do, and where I was going to go. And I ended up in a beautiful place in Monterey where my friend was, and to write for her husband, who was an artist. It was the best thing that could ever happen. The best. I can say that now. At the time, I would have killed you, for saying that. But it was really a growing learning experience about myself. And certainly one of the books I published, I'm going to republish it, that said, it takes a lot of shit to make a garden grow, but it was at that time, again, when I'm sitting on the floor in this tiny studio surrounded by animals, I'm crying, and the fax machines were very big then, is pumping out this something to me, and it's from a friend in LA saying, "Cara, we found a producer who wants to, publish your book about your letters to Otto Frank." And I'm sitting going, "What? This is crazy." And I didn't know, I didn't want to. I started looking at the letter. Well, all my letters, if you read my book, were all about my happy, happy, happy life with my husband, the house, the babies. It was going backwards, and I did not want to write that book. No, I can't go there. I don't want to read this. And I didn't know if Otto would want me to, although he knew at the time, before he passed, I was working on some articles about him, and he was correcting the facts. He knew someday, but he was very private. It had to be right. But Fritzy was my, beacon. And I wrote to her and I said, "Fritzy, this is happening. Should I do this?" And I asked Buddy too, "Is this?" And they said, "Yes, we want you to do this. We want people to know who Otto was." And that's why I did it. And I got an advance. That saved my life. That saved me. I was struggling. I had no money. And Otto from above is saying, here's a check. Right.
And
And
so many people don't believe in that,
I know they don't.
right? I have so many stories myself where, just to speak, and then I'll share with you
Yeah,
after, that has nothing to do with this. Where, and an angel I don't even know came into my life.
all the time.
All the time.
All the time. Listen to what people are saying. They don't even look, you think of angels as la, la, la. No, these are some tough people that don't look the part. And I listen to their voices and I go, "Oh, that's an angel." Well, everybody to me is an angel. And I do believe in angels very much so. But
Sure.
they're all around, but you can call them what you want. People have all beliefs, and I love their beliefs. And I've gone to every temple, church, mass. I cross myself, I'll sing with them. I love it. It's spirit. It doesn't matter what the label is to me, as long as
Correct.
it's not separating each other. But yeah, it's it was very, very powerful. And he was with me all the time. And when I give a talk, he's right there on the stage with me. And if I'm having a panic, and I've told people who get scared, and I can hear his voice saying, "This is not about you. Tell the story. Tell the story."
Right. And so from a genealogical perspective, so he is the father of Anne Frank. Anne Frank's stories is what inspired you. And, the impact, you just never know
Mhm.
the impact that you're going to have. I mean, that 13-year-old girl, when she talked about, getting her period there for the
Right,
first time, she talked about starting to have feelings for Peter, who she detested at first.
right.
What was that all about? Like, she talks about these changes that we go through in those years so vulnerably, so innocently, and so raw and real.
And brilliantly. She was a brilliant writer. She
Brilliant,
would have,
right?
had she lived, she would have been I think it's one of the most brilliant, you know, books. You
Right?
can't believe this child
Yeah.
was so wise. But yes, you're
Right?
right. We watched her grow up, becoming a woman.
Right?
You know, uh, it's fascinating. And the story, I meet wonderful people through her and through
Right?
Otto
Right?
continually,
Right?
continually. It has so many wonderful legs to it, and I'm thrilled for it because it is a story that needs to be told over and over again.
Right. And so you're continuing to move this forward, and you have no idea who
Right.
you're impacting,
No,
who is telling the story
that's right.
and moving it forward. So yes, it's a story about, the horrific things that went on
Hmm.
at that time. It is a story that, we want to be reminded about, be aware and, and be discerning,
Right.
but it's more a story of becoming.
That's exactly right. That's
Yep.
right. And how we can live on,
Right.
just like she said, even after her death. I want to live on, she said. And has she ever? I mean, it's extraordinary. And so many, when I've spoken to young people, I mean, I've had people cry in my arms, "You're the closest to Anne Frank," or "I feel I'm being bullied. Nobody likes me because I'm blah blah this or that." They identify with her. One darling Latino girl said, "This is my story." She says, "This is my story." She says, "There are gangs outside, there's killing, and I'm in a crowded little apartment with my family, and I have no privacy." She says, "This is me." And I mean, what's so wonderful is that everybody, when I saw that, all those letters, they were from all over the world, and their stories are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
We hope to get these letters out there. A lot of the people are probably already gone, but people need to know who they are, because I know some of them, and each one could be a movie in itself. How he saved them, what he did to help these young people who reached out to him, who were desperate, who were suicidal. He saved them, all of them. And then when he
It
took
could be
his
an Apple TV series,
Oh, it could
movies.
so easily. When I was so in awe of what he showed me, and he takes this huge box and sits me down and puts it in front of me, and he says, "These are your stories. These are your letters." So he saved me, which absolutely blew my mind, because it wasn't what I said. It's just that I mattered to him.
Right.
We all mattered to him, and we
So
were
so
yeah.
so there's a little lesson in here about what we're losing
Yes.
in today's environment. I have a dear friend who has since passed away, but when her parents passed, what she did was organize. Remember the 35 millimeter slides?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Gorgeous pictures of their trips to Europe. He was a Harvard professor, and the sites and the thing. She organized them chronologically, and
Wow.
then she took her grandfather's letters, her grandmother's letters,
Hmm.
both sides of the family. They saved their letters, her father's letters, and she saw the process and evolution of her father and the family, how they met, how he met the mother, what went on through
Oh,
that,
man.
right? Because he met her, she's French, she was in Paris. And as Hitler was coming in, he wrote to his father and he said, we need to bring her here. We need to save her. And they brought her over,
Wow. That's
right?
amazing.
Right? Right. And so things that she didn't know, we don't save anything anymore.
I know. I know. In
And
fact, I
so
save too
we're
much. I'm trying to throw it away. But yes,
right, but we lose
we do.
that connection, that ability
Yes,
to connect um, in such a way. It's like excavation.
it is.
An archaeologist of your life.
Exactly. And the
Yeah,
thrill that we see, all I wanted from my grandmother and my mother were their cookbooks. Now, I don't cook. I'm the worst cook in the world, but I love their cookbooks because their handwriting is in there and their little notes and all of that. I can smell that, the stains of the cooking and all of that. They mean so much to me, that's history. And
right,
when we have aspects of history, um, it's a gift, and then you can give that on to your children. I'm doing that with my kids and my
right.
grandkids. It's just basically this was your grandmother's, this was your mother's, this was my mother, and this is, and it has a story behind it.
One of my emancipation gifts, if you will, to my children
Right.
was to create a photo album just for them.
Oh, that's
So
beautiful.
this is all of the pictures that we have from the time you were born, yeah,
Hmm.
actually even the time I was pregnant with you, right?
Right.
Until today. And then it's up to you if you want to continue,
Right.
right, adding to this. But as of today, this is our history.
That's beautiful. I know
Yeah.
that Otto encouraged me when there were two times that he got very emotional. And when he was reliving the first time he saw the diary, when me put it right in front of him, he was shocked. He didn't know that she saved it, and he had never read it. Anne was so private, so private. Nobody, unless she read maybe excerpts to them, nobody knew what was in that. And he certainly had no idea this other side of her. He was
Right.
the closest to her of all of them. But he would have thought Margaret, who is this gentle, brilliant young woman who, would have written that. She had written a journal, by the way, and has never been found in her
Mm.
diary, which is just desperately sad. But when he started reading Anne, it moved him so deeply. First of all, her words, but then the fact that he didn't know this side of her. And he thought, how could he not know her? And it was like a double death for him. And he turned to me, tears in his eyes, and he said, know your children, Cara, know your children. And affected me so greatly, which I did, but that resonated with me. So I tried doing a journal for myself, but I hated it. But I did do journals of my boys, which I'm so glad from the time they were in utero
Mhm.
to I have a stack of these journals, and I'm so thrilled. I got to read it to them later on, and they were laughing so much. The questions they asked, the way they talk, what they look like, because it forces you to be an observer of these people that you're raising or anybody else. You're no longer an extension of them. You're watching them, you're listening to them. And you can put that in this journal, and I'm so grateful that I did that.
Yeah, I have a friend who she has a young boy who they adopted.
Uh-huh.
And from the moment he moved into her house, of course, before the adoptions went through, there were no pictures, and she called him Boo or something, right?
Right.
Daily stories of he got up and he this morning and he was so excited. He came running downstairs, Mama, I want French toast, right? Went on and on about, I mean, everything that goes on in the day. He
Oh,
decided he wants to go to Cowabunga and play. So we went to right. So she has a daily journal. She puts
oh,
it out on Facebook, and it's beautiful to share this life. But I know she has a journal where this writing is kept
that's beautiful.
for
That
him.
is that's just, and what that says to the child is that I really must matter. They take the time to do that,
Right,
and now my son is doing, both of my sons have these, my grandsons, I'm crazy about them. They write about their sons,
right,
they'll either one is a videographer, so he'll do pictures and things, like he captures that. And my other son writes, and so he keeps uh, in Nick's notes, uh, things that he says, the same thing, the way I did it,
right,
and they're so
right.
funny and so wonderful. You follow children and you listen to their conversation when they're talking to somebody and you write it down. It's hysterical and it's moving, and it's truth.
Truth,
It's truth. What they say to you comes from a deep place,
right.
and you don't want to forget those things. They tell you the truth.
Well, here it's interesting that you say that. So I'm going to touch a little bit on the spiritual side of me.
Right.
I have a friend who's a spiritualist, and he does a lot of work with his clients on the inner child. And he said to me, all of the wisdom there is comes from your inner child, Gail.
It's true.
Not from a higher being, but from your inner child.
Hmm.
And I look at that as my inner child looks at everything with excitement
Hmm.
and curiosity and asks endless questions.
And look at what you're doing.
Right? Well, this is what I'm doing, right? This is right, right. And the inner child is playing,
Yes.
right? It's not so serious, right? Of course, mine doesn't like to get hurt, and she has a
Right.
little bit of a temper tantrum, but to be honest.
Yeah.
But when I have, like right now, I envision her sitting in my lap, swinging her legs
See, that's beautiful.
as we're talking, right?
So
And
you're
so,
holding her.
right, and she's like participating in this, right?
That's right.
Right. And so energetically, that's what's going on.
I love it. And we tend to forget. I certainly do. I know this intellectually. I can say it, but I'm not very kind to my child. I've never been my best friend. I've never liked me.
Yeah.
And and so I would never treat a child the way I treat me. I'm only learning to be kinder. If a child is tired, oh my God, you stop everything, you give them a nap. Are they hungry? You feed them. If they're sad, you hold them. We have rocking chairs and you listen to their little voices and what they're saying. Everything they do matters. Did I do that with myself? No, I did not.
And this is the story of life.
Yes.
Um, and I'll tell you what, one of my clients that I had this year, we did actually inner child work. And she is fantastic with her grandchildren. Oh my God, she is the warrior for them. She is amazing with them. And I looked at her and I said, so the way that you're treating yourself right now, is that how you would treat your granddaughter? And she almost fell off her chair. She's like, no.
There you go. There you
But
go.
yet you allow yourself to do that to yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's my little grandson who's almost 8 next week. He played Tiny Tim, by the way, cutest thing in the world. Oh my God.
Mhm.
Um, that's helping me cope with being older. To me, it's like, this is not fun. They're not making mirrors the way they used to,
No,
you
I
know.
know.
Well, who the
My
hell?
mirror does it doesn't like it shows the truth.
Yeah,
I'm
it
gonna
shows
change
the
the
truth.
lighting in
There's
that.
an old lady back there.
I
I don't
know.
know who she is, but could she please go away, whatever, and he'll say, Nana, those are not wrinkles, those are lifelines. And I go, oh, I love you so much. But he'll play with my bony hands the way I did with my grandma, and I find myself finding it endearing, uh, because he loves me, just me, who I
Right,
am, not
right.
the way I looked or I used to look. He does look at pictures and say, what happened? you know, did you used to have black hair? Yes, I did. Could we not talk about it? You know, but it helps you accept the stages of our life. Children are so real and honest, and they don't see that. They see your heart,
Right.
just the way animals do.
Yep.
They respond to your heart. If you
Yep.
love them, if you're good to you, you're kind to them, if you give them space to, if you hold them, they love you. They love you back. They don't care what you look like or, anything.
Yep.
They are love machines. They're love magnets.
Part of my morning, and I call it my morning meditation. I don't
Right.
meditate. I actually spend 3 to 4 hours of just being.
Good.
And I'll sit on the couch with a blanket, and the dog gets on the couch, snuggles up like right next to me,
Yeah.
and I'll put a little bit of the blanket over her, and the cat gets in my lap to lay down.
Oh, I love that so much.
And the three of us just kind of
Yeah.
hang out for a little while,
I know exactly what you're saying. I
right?
couldn't do it without my animals. We have our Peaches, and if when I'm not feeling well, she'll put her, and she's hyper, hyper, hyper little girl, but she will calm down, put her little paw on me, and look at
Mm,
me like, and there's nothing. And my cat that passed recently that used to just lay on top of me, and it was just
yeah,
like, thank you. Oh, that feels so
right.
good.
And they know,
They do know.
they
They
know,
do know. They're
right?
talk. Animals are angels. They are angels. They're pure.
So one of the lessons from Otto,
Hmm.
we're kind of talking about that right now,
Right.
is what matters, what really matters,
And it's not ego. Ego is, and I have had to learn that really hard. So with the matter thing and the matter, while I was on this journey and after he passed, that was in my head, and I was getting all these crazy jobs just to keep going. And I had every job. I knew everybody in Pacific Grove and Monterey because I worked for everybody. And one of the jobs, which I wrote about it, but I'm going to write about it more, was one of the highlights of my life, and it was banquet serving. I never would have thought that. And when I first started there, I thought I reached the lowest point. Blah, here I am in this looking like a penguin in a black and white uniform. It was the so much fun and so stressful and challenging on my body, my mind, my spirit. I loved that. When I think about banquet serving, I feel like I was in the army, with this troop around me. And I remember at that point, my first book on Otto, that book had been published. So I had like 15 minutes of fame in this little town known as this author. And yet here I was banquet serving, so I certainly wasn't a wealthy, well, it was just, and when I looked through the curtain to see who was out there, it was all of the people in Monterey that would have known me as author. And I went back and I looked at the group around me and I said, I can't go out there. They see me as an author, and look at me. I can't go out there. I'm just a banquet server. I was just like freaking out. Ego, ego, ego.
mm-hmm.
And one of the little servers, I just loved her. She was so feisty. She picks up this bread bowl and puts it in my hand. She says, just go out there, give them the bread. It doesn't matter. And there it was. Woo! And it didn't. And it was
Right.
the best thing that could happen for me. And somebody said, oh, look, we're being served by an author. And it was just, I had to get over my ego. And we all work on that. I have to do it. My son is saying, Mom, you have the biggest ego in the world. To me, that says you're arrogant. I'm not an arrogant person. But ego says to you, you're not good enough. Why are you doing this? Nobody cares. Uh, you should be, coulda, woulda, shoulda,
So
all that.
ego does have a job,
Right.
right? It's just that ego thinks it's the boss sometimes,
It does.
right? So its job is to keep you safe. And
That's
part
true.
of you're not good enough is if you do that, that's dangerous. That's
Mhm.
not safe for us to try that,
Right.
right? So it thinks
Right.
that it's protecting you. One of the things that I do is when ego steps in with something like that, I look and say, so what is it that where's the danger? That's ego. Where's the danger?
Right.
Is the danger real, or are you telling me an old story?
That's good. I like that. I
Right.
do.
Right. And sometimes it's an old story, and I'm like, well, so why is that coming up anymore? We're done with that. So what is
Right.
really going? And once your conscious mind becomes the boss,
Right.
ego will do whatever the conscious mind tells it to do.
That's good. I had also something that I read that I liked. It said ego stands for easing God out. So whether people believe in God or not, whatever spirit or inner force, everybody has their own God spirit. But I like
Right.
that. But if you ease God out, there's no room for a spirituality or a hopefulness or
Right.
a feeling good about where you are in the moment. You're now going in the past and say, yeah, but I used to be, or I used to, da 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 da. And now you've canceled out everything that you're doing now and who you are.
Right.
And, I found that, but wait a minute, I really enjoy this being a banquet server because it's making me stronger. And I like this community of people I'm with, and it's silly and it's crazy, and I'm learning a lot from it. And I can also be, a writer, an author. I could do all these things, and still do this. It's
Right.
not an either or. We give ourselves such labels.
Oh, it's insane. So one of the things that I do is I will do contract work with an organization
Hmm.
in project management.
Right.
I'll only do it for a couple of days a week because if you're contracting that out for one project, you don't need a 40-hour a week person.
Right.
Sorry, you don't.
You don't.
You don't. And there are times when I used to think, oh, but Gail, this isn't spiritual, this isn't blah, 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 blah. And absolutely is. Because when I see, here's the list of the activities that we want to do, and here's the goal, I get excited.
Right.
Right? Right? There's another game to play.
And that's an aspect of yourself. You
Right.
are a project manager in so many ways
Right?
that you might think of it, oh, well, this is corporate, but that's part of who you are. You couldn't do that if it wasn't in you.
Right. Right. And I always have done that organically. Always.
Interesting. Yeah, I used to beat myself up again I started out in the world as a copywriter in LA, advertising, which I thought, oh, this is the most superficial blah, blah, but I had so much fun doing it. Commercials, I'd done a lot of them in those days. I worked with some great people and great accounts, but to say that I was a copywriter later, I felt embarrassed. It seemed so superficial. And yet it that working on that and writing for radio helped me succinctly in so many ways be a better writer because it's an attention span. People right now, there's no attention span. Even then it was like you could do actually 60-second commercials, but there now you have to get to the point fast. But it was wonderful training to get to the point, get to the story before people turn the page or turn it off. What you said? What's the elevator speech? Where are you going with it? How do you want to move people? What do you want them to remember? That's what that world taught me. And
It's,
yeah,
Cara, we have so much
yeah.
in common.
I know we do.
When I was literally homeless,
Right.
right? One of the things that came across my desk to do was there were about 3 or 4 pharmaceutical organizations, and they had quarterly newsletters.
Yes.
And, they wanted someone to take their articles that they would write and put it into the newsletter.
Okay.
Right. And so I didn't write it. Sometimes I had to clean it up or go like, does everyone understand this?
Yeah,
Right.
right.
I did a lot of research on stuff. I know a lot of stuff about pharmaceuticals. Because I had no money coming.
Yeah, exactly. You
Right.
do all of that.
Right. Right.
You
You don't
shovel.
say no. You say, do I want breakfast tomorrow? Yes, I'm going to do this. Right.
And you can't. You with
Right.
actors, the same thing. They'll say, here's a musical and you have to tap dance. Can you tap dance? Sure, I know how to tap dance. And then you go out and you take the tap dance lesson.
Right. Or you go on YouTube and you start,
How do you tap dance? But
right.
you say yes to everything so that you can do it and you can perform, you can write, you can do it. If you censor yourself, now I'm finding it harder at this age because to be a writer in a freelance world, I don't even understand what they're saying. You have to do this and I said, wait a minute, all I do is write. This teeny little thing, I've specialized myself into a corner. I
Right.
don't know that other stuff. I'm not a social media person. I don't know any of it and I don't want to.
No,
But,
no.
again,
And honestly, Cara, this time next year, that stuff's not going to matter. Just saying.
because we'll all be dead.
No,
Because
no, because it doesn't matter.
it
It
doesn't,
doesn't.
does it?
It doesn't matter. We'll talk offline about
Okay.
some of the things that I see going on with entrepreneurs, and I'm like, that is like 20-year-old news, baby. You guys still doing this stuff, and you're wondering why you're struggling.
No,
The
people
world
want their
is
stories told.
changing.
It is changing. I write people's stories and
Right. Stories is where it's at.
that is, and everybody has a story.
Right.
Everybody. I love it. They'll start saying, oh, I really don't have anything to say. And you sit down with them and go, oh my God,
You have no idea. I
you
was
have,
that way. Gail tell you a story. Like,
oh, you have a huge story.
I
And
have a billion stories.
I know
Yeah.
you do. You
Yeah.
do.
So, Tara, we could go on and
I
on
know.
forever. There's so much. I mean, we just barely scratched the surface of Cara. What I would love, though, is for you to let people know if they wanted to know more about you, get in touch with you. How would they do that?
Okay, well, thank you. I would certainly love them to read my book, and Tree of Hope. I don't know if you have a copy there, but I have one here.
You got
Um,
Tree of Hope? Yeah.
I have Tree of Hope right here. I don't know if it's going to look backwards if I show. Yeah, it does.
Nope, looks
No.
good.
Okay. Tree of Hope is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, but it's on my website. You can go to wordsfromcara.com and you'll see more of what I do. There's more articles about me. Something recent I'm very, very excited about, along with Tree of Hope, because the last chapter in Tree of Hope, that of course is Otto Frank,
Of course.
or the lessons he gave me and he taught me and all of us. And they're really, really powerful. How you can be your own tree of hope, what really matters in life, write to whomever you want. These are things that, basically I'm very excited about that because it's easy to read, but he's so present in this book. And his voice is so strong. I know he would want people to know he was a unifier. He loved all people. He would be devastated with what's happening in the world today, because he wanted to unite all people, and all the people that wrote to him were all races and all religions. He wrote to everybody. He had, there was just basically, if you're a good person, that's all he cared about. But then I wanted so much, because of what's going on with Holocaust denying, and teachers need help in the classrooms, uh, helping their students. There was a young woman who's, for her master's thesis, wrote this, an educator's guide to teaching the Holocaust. And that's also on my website. And you can download this for free. And she has done an inordinately extraordinarily job. It links to everything you ever want to know. But the Holocaust, World War II, Otto Frank, and my book, and all the details about it. So it's like the Cliff Notes. The teachers don't have time to go through all the books, but this is such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful educator's guide. And I want this to be in schools everywhere.
So that link will be in the show notes, guys.
It's right. Yeah, it's right on my website.
Yeah, most definitely. So thank you so much, Cara. And everyone, thank you so much for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. If this resonated with you, please do give us a thumbs up. If you have a question, do put it in the comment. We'd be happy to answer it and get back to you. If you know someone who could benefit from this conversation, share it out to them. And as always, I ask you to please subscribe so you'll know when the next event is coming up. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Cara.
Thank you so much, Gail. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.